No one noticed the first story that disappeared. It wasn't a person, not a city, not even a memory. It was a story, a famous one, a war hero whose sacrifice had once inspired millions. One day, his name stopped appearing anywhere. Books that mentioned him were suddenly blank. Videos where he was interviewed began to glitch. People who once admired him felt nothing. No sadness, no confusion, just emptiness, like he was never important. At first, they blamed the internet, data corruption, server failures. But then it kept happening. A love story from the 1980s vanished. A revolution that changed a country was forgotten. A child's viral video disappeared, not deleted, consumed. The pattern was terrifying. It wasn't random. It only targeted stories that meant something, stories that made people feel. Then they saw them. Not ships, not creatures. Shapes moving across the sky like distortions, barely visible, as if something was eating reality itself. The first confirmed contact happened in silence. A writer sat alone in his apartment, typing the final chapter of a story about hope, sacrifice, and human strength. As he wrote the last line, the air in the room bent, the walls stretched, and something appeared behind him. Not fully, just enough to be seen. A shape made of shifting images, faces, moments, memories overlapping each other. It leaned toward his screen, and his story began to disappear, word by word. The writer panicked. He tried to retype it, but every word vanished instantly. The thing wasn't attacking him, it was feeding. Then, for the first time, it spoke. Not in sound, but in feeling. This one is strong. The writer froze. "What are you?" he whispered. The answer came cold and ancient. "We are what comes after your kind is finished." Across the world, millions of stories began collapsing. History books rewrote themselves. Movies lost meaning. Songs became empty noise. Humanity started forgetting what made them human. Because stories are how humans remember who they are. Without them, they were just bodies. Governments tried to fight back with backups, archives, offline storage, but it didn't matter. This wasn't digital. It was existential. Then something unexpected happened. A small group of people didn't lose their stories, not because they were protected, but because they were still being written. A girl telling her dying father a story, a soldier writing letters home, a man recording his last message. Live stories, unfinished, untouchable. That's when humanity realized aliens couldn't consume a story that was still being lived. Hope returned, but only for a moment, because the aliens adapted. They didn't just consume finished stories anymore, they started ending them. Accidents increased, disappearances spread, deaths accelerated, because a dead story is an easy meal. The writer survived, barely, and he understood something no one else did. They're not eating stories, they're eating meaning. And that's when humanity made a choice. If stories were their weakness, they would turn them into weapons. Across the world, people started writing again, not for fame, not for money, but for survival. Stories of resistance, stories of defiance, stories of humanity refusing to end. And something incredible happened. The more powerful the story, the harder it was to consume. A mother's sacrifice burned one of the entities. A soldier's final stand pushed another back. Because meaning had weight, power, force. The writer returned to his keyboard, hands shaking, heart racing. This time, he didn't write a story about hope. He wrote a story about humans fighting back. As he typed, the entity returned, bigger, hungrier. "This one again," it whispered. But something was different. The words didn't disappear, they stayed, burning. "Impossible," the entity reacted. The writer looked straight at it and said, "This story doesn't end the way you want." And then he wrote the final line. "The thing trying to consume this story dies." For a second, nothing happened. Then the entity screamed, not in sound, but in existence, and began collapsing, tearing itself apart. For the first time, a human didn't just tell a story, he decided it. Across the planet, millions felt it, the same realization, the same power. Stories weren't just memories, they were reality. And humans were the only species that could create them. The sky filled with those shapes again, but this time they weren't hunting, they were retreating. Because humanity had become something else. Not prey, not victims. Authors. The writer leaned back, exhausted, shaking, alive, and whispered one final line. "They came to erase us, but they forgot. We're the ones who decide how the story ends." For the first time, the universe realized humans don't survive stories. We control them.